It's a letter of mine that's a favorite, and I've read at many retreats. It's from a Nobel Prize winner named George Wald, who's a biologist at Harvard. He wrote it in response to an argument about the starting of a Nobel laureate's sperm bank. Some irate feminists wrote into the paper saying, sperm bank, they should have an egg bank. Why just sperm? He says, you're right, Pauline. It takes an egg as well as a sperm to start a Nobel laureate. Every one of them has had a mother as well as a father, and say all you want of fathers, their contribution to conception is really rather small. Nobel laureates aside, he said there isn't much technically in the way of starting an egg bank. There are some problems, but nothing so hard as involve the other kinds of breeder reactors. But think of a man so vain as to insist on getting a superior egg from an egg bank. Then he has to fertilize it. And when it's fertilized, where does he go with it? To his wife? Here, dear, you can hear him saying, I just got this superior egg from an egg bank and just fertilized it myself. Will you take care of it? I've got eggs of my own to worry about, she replies. You know what you can do with your superior egg. Go rent a womb, and while you're at it, you better rent a room, too. You see, it just won't work, he says. For the truth is that what one really needs is not Nobel laureates, but love. How do you think one gets to be a Nobel laureate? Wanting love, that's how. Wanting it so bad one works all the time and ends up a Nobel laureate. It's a consolation prize. What matters is love. Forget sperm banks and egg banks. Banks and love are incompatible. If you don't know that, you don't know bankers. So just practice loving. Love a Russian. You'd be surprised how easy it is and how it will brighten up your morning. Love whales, Iranians, Vietnamese, not just here but everywhere. When you've gotten really good, you can even try loving some of our politicians. So this is the other voice. It's the voice that says, in addition to the compelling social problems of our time, he said this amazing thing. Even the Nobel Prize is a consolation prize, because what human beings most want is to be honored, to be loved, to be recognized. And what the world most compellingly needs is someone who understands how not to get caught in these ancient human patterns of prejudice and fear and anger. Doesn't meditation make people withdraw from the world? Anyway, one has seen that for sure. There's a fine teaching in the Buddhist tradition called the near enemies. The near enemy of love is attachment. It masquerades like love, it feels like it, but it's separate. It says, I love you, but really I'm attached to you and I need you out there to make me whole, rather than just the sense of love as honoring and seeing our connection. The near enemy to compassion is pity. Oh, that poor person, they're suffering. I don't suffer. It's not me, certainly. But they all do, and it sort of separates them again. The near enemy to equanimity or balance of mind is indifference. It masquerades as equanimity, feels like, well, everything's fine, basically because I don't care about anybody. In not caring, we can find some peace. Real equanimity is when the heart begins to open and we find a capacity to experience all that the world presents with balance, with love, with openness. That it's not a running away from the world at all. It's really a sitting down right in the middle of it and paying attention to that which is pleasant and that which is painful, that which makes a lot of noise and that which is silent, and beginning to listen to our relationship to it, to observe it, to learn from it, and learn a wise way of relating. So then what is the heart of this inner way of practice? The heart of it is mindfulness, listening, attention to our bodies, to all the various energies, to the voices, paying attention when we eat. Which voice do you listen to when you stop a meal? Is it the belly which maybe speaks first and says, oh, had enough, comfortable, nice and full? And then the tongue chimes in, gee, but that fruit was so good, let's have a little more. And the eyes say, yeah, and there's more of that other stuff too that we haven't finished yet. And you hear all these different voices. to live in the feelings, to be aware of both emotions, to be aware of the pleasant and neutral and unpleasant aspect of our experience, and learn that we don't have to resist that which is painful and grasp that which is pleasant all the time. That's perhaps our conditioning, but in fact, it doesn't lead to peace, it doesn't lead to happiness. Because things change anyway, even if you're attached to them, they change. It's an open-hearted and non-judging awareness which comes into the body and into the feelings, and then observes the mind as well and its laws, the laws of karma, the laws of impermanence, and begins to see how to relate to it all out of compassion or kindness and wisdom, which means seeing how it's really operating. Sometimes it gets very painful when you sit. Sometimes it's pleasant and you have bliss and light, then you get attached. Sometimes it gets painful and then you want to avoid it. Thomas Merton said at one point, "True prayer and love are learned in the hour when prayer becomes impossible and the heart has turned to stone." And sometimes it's in the very greatest difficulties in our sitting or in our life that our heart opens the most, or that we finally get the fact that we can't get attached to things and hold on to them, that they don't go the way we think, but the way that they go. And so wisdom begins to arise. How then to work with the basic difficulties which arise in meditation? What to do when there's physical pain? As best you can, sit and note pain, pain. Pay attention. See if you can notice how it changes. Sit comfortably. Don't make pain for yourself. There's plenty in this life without it. Start to pay attention to all of what makes up our reality. And that develops what is called in spiritual disciplines a heart of greatness. If you open the door to the outside, what do you get when you open it? You get whatever's out there. You get the weather for that day. And if you keep the door open, you get the weather changes. If you open your mind and your body and your heart, what do you get? You get everything. You get what's painful and what's pleasant. And there is a way to come to a new relationship of it. So in working with difficulties, desire, anger, restlessness, doubt, fear, these are the traditional list of hindrances which arise in meditation. How can one work with them? How can one make one's spiritual practice so that these become workable? There's a story in the community of George Gurdjieff of this obnoxious and very difficult man who finally left the community. He was having such a hard time, and Gurdjieff paid him to come back, and everyone was upset because they all had to pay a lot to live there, and here's Gurdjieff paying this old creepy guy who gets annoyed at everybody and is dirty. And they asked him why he did that. And he said, "This man is like yeast for bread. Without him, you wouldn't really learn the meaning of patience or compassion or loving kindness. You wouldn't learn that about yourself." So that when these states of mind arise, restlessness or desire or fear, wanting, if only it were somehow different than it is, or judgment, I don't like this, or worry or agitation, what to do with them? Sit in the very middle of them and study them. Note how they feel in the body. There's desire. Desire runs much of our world. You watch TV, that's all they sell is desire. Pay attention and see what it's like. How do you feel it in the body? What is it like in the mind? Give a clear and careful, mindful attention to it without getting caught, not suppressing it or trying to make it go away, and not getting involved, just noting desire, wanting, until you come to see its nature and you come to some balance where you're not so caught up in it or afraid of it. The same for anger. Most of us are either afraid of it and stuff it down, or we act it out. See if when judgment or anger arises, if you can just sit and note angry, furious, judging, whatever it is, and feel it. Just heat and movement, temperature, energy in the body, certain contraction, different qualities of mind. See if it's possible to experience that energy and learn from it. See how it changes, what it does to you, what its flavor, what the quality of it is, its effect on you. And then maybe you can learn not to be quite so caught in it. Doesn't mean it won't still come, heaven knows. But that your relationship to it can be a wiser one. Do it again and again, with fear, with all the kinds of mental states that come up, especially the difficult ones, until you can sit and allow them to come and go like cows or sheep in the meadows. Now, what if they're very strong? What if they're too difficult? They're really, really hard. What should you do? Say, you're so restless you just can't stand it. What to do? Die. Okay? Be the first yogi to ever die of restlessness. Just say, fine, take me. Surrender to it and let it kill you. And what you discover if you do that is that, in a way, you die. What dies is your resistance to it. And that you just carry on. And you discover this powerful capacity we have, if you work with it, to open to all of our experience and find some balance in it. Now, if you're more advanced, if you've done practice for a while, you may also wish to work with this capacity one has of going into the very middle of something. There's desire or anger or fear or whatever it is, not just to feel it, but see if you can find the very center of it and discover what's there, or maybe go through the center in some way. Now, what about all the different kinds of meditation? Here one's learning Vipassana. How about Tibetan meditation or Zen or TM or so forth? There are a lot of good ways to practice. There are these two students of a master who are arguing. One says, it's really good to sit very still and not move and just work with whatever pain comes. And the other one says, no, that's macho. You want to relax and be gentle and just be aware, but you don't make a lot of effort in it. And they're arguing, and they can't seem to get any answer, and they go to the master. And one says, you really got to make effort to bring your mind back and to stay very present and not to move. And that way you get through all this stuff. You learn how to be still in the middle of anything. And the master says, you're right. And the other one says, but wait a second, don't you want to learn to be loving and gentle, to move if you really need to, and just to find a balance with it all, to be soft and not to struggle against it, simply to open. And the master says, you're right. And a third student who's sitting there says, but they can't both be right. The master said, and you're right too. Okay? There are a lot of good ways of meditation, many good ones. There are some that are better than others in the sense that some are only have a limited purpose, but there are many major schools of meditation which are wonderful. If they develop awareness or mindfulness of the body or the mind and the heart, our sense experience, and the laws where you observe how the world is working, they can bring you to liberation. They can bring you to freedom. Any kind of meditation that does that. So it doesn't really matter which kind you've chosen. If you're doing Vipassana practice, wonderful. If what's accessible or interesting to you is Zen, fine. What's important is that you pick one and you stay with it and you do it. It takes discipline. If you want to learn to play piano, it takes more than just a day once in a while and a few minutes here and there. If you're lucky, after a year, you'll be able to play Happy Birthday to You. If you really want to learn something in a full way, tennis, piano, not to speak of training the mind and opening the heart, it takes perseverance and patience and a systematic training. Pick a practice. Use it, work with it every day, work with a teacher if you can, or in circumstances where you sit with other people. And in doing it over and over again, it starts to develop your capacity to open. It starts to train one to be more in the present moment. It starts to develop this sense of patience. It brings a kind of compassion when you sit and you really feel what's in there.